ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलिर्नतोऽस्मि। हरि ओम। In any sadhana that we do, the most important aspect of sadhana is to observe the mind. If we learn the art of observing our own mind, which in other words is called mananam, to do manan is to observe the mind with all its constituents, the major constituent being thought. Today, for some reason, we were slightly delayed to start the session, but observe what happened to our own mind. There was anxiety. There were thoughts in the mind that what went wrong? Will it start or not? What's the issue? We are already past by 1 minute, 2 minutes. The thoughts galloped in the mind. So if we observe the mind, we all will come to know that our mind is constantly attaching or aligning itself to either the objects or the memories. And because the mind is associated with the 5 indriyas, there is a continuous downpour of information, perception. We continuously perceive the things from outside, and also we have enormous ability to recall our own experiences in the form of memory or smriti. So who are we? We are an organ which is constantly interacting with what is being fed by 5 indriyas or what is being fed by the memory aspect of the 6th indriya called mind. So there is a continuous transaction happening between stimuli from outside or stimulus coming from the mind. Now that is the nature of the mind. But if we closely observe the interaction of the mind, we do realize that the mind has peculiarities which are developed over time. One is, it doesn't stay at one place for a long time. A common observation is mind flits from thought through thought or object to object. A common observation. Now let's see, even if it is for a fleeting time, when the mind is associating itself with an object, what precisely happens? You have a writing pen in front of you, you look at the pen, and when you look at the pen, you know what it is. So you have a knowledge about the object. And what is that knowledge? It is a writing instrument. To this extent, the knowledge is proper or precise. No issues with that. Now what happens is, immediately the mind tries to extend itself further in terms of inferences that it tries to draw from the object, and it makes impressions about the object. Like, had this fountain pen been Montblanc or Chopard or whatever brand, it would have been better. That looks fine. It looks nice. It is impressive. I wish the fountain pen could have been black in color instead of white in color. So in other words, when I approach an object called fountain pen or a ball pen, I'm actually approaching the object with preconceived notions about the object. And when I don't have any preconceived notion about an object, the object doesn't make much sense to me. For example, every day our car travels on a road, and our eyes definitely go towards the road, but the road itself does not create any impression in my mind because my mind has not interacted with the road with the impressions that I carry about the road. In other words, I saw an object, but it did not create or recall any of the impression about the object. And the impression about the objects are directly correlated with positive impressions, negative impressions, attracting impressions, repulsing impressions, which in our world we call it happiness and sorrow. So when I approach a person, I don't see a person. I see collection of my own impressions about that person. And if the collection is repulsive, I say I came across a bad person. If I have got favorable impression about this collection of impressions about the person, I say I came across a good person. So then what happened? I did not see a person. I always see collection of impressions I have about the person or the object. So we have two issues with our mind. One, it does not stay long enough with any object. One, so it is fleeting in nature. Second, it does not see a thing as a thing, but as a collection of impression about a thing. So when I have a fight with my wife or husband, I'm not looking at him or her as a person. I'm looking at him or her as a collection of impressions I have gathered about her, which are either full of repulsive thoughts, impressions, or attractive impressions. Based on that, the person becomes a repulsive person or an attractive person. These impressions, when they are in a concentrated form existing in the mind, such mind is called I-centric mind or selfish mind. Selfish because it constantly thinks of me. I feel this. I want this. I think this. So everything is seen from a narrow slit called I. Because of this, what happens is the world which is created by the Lord is definitely not created for me. He hasn't kept Dr. Jadhav as a center person and created the world so that it would be precisely the way Dr. Jadhav wants. That's not the scheme of things. A screw in a machine cannot think that the machine has been erected because I was existing as a screw. The fact is, I am amongst the myriad of different screws that are there in the machine, and I am one of them. I'm at a particular place, I have a place in space and time, and I do a functioning. And to do that function in that machine is my job. Similarly, in cosmos, in creation, I have been created as a jiva. The jiva has certain role to perform, and the role is the role given by the God, so it is a divine role. In the divine role, I distorted that role by creating my own impressions, because instead of making the creation Lord centric, I made it me centric. And I'm so much used to that I even utter the statements like, I have to do this. I want to correct the environment around me. I want to really in future do this. That means I have projected my own plans without realizing I'm a part of somebody else's plan called Ishvara, the Lord. When I am able to get rid of these two issues of my mind, one, the fleeting tendency of moving from one to another object, and second, to stop the tendency of thirsting my impressions on any object and person, we are sorted. How do I stop flitting from one thing to the other thing? By staying at one thing for a longer time. Immediately what comes to mind is to go into the jungle, sit into the Padmasana and get into the Dhyanam. A high objective, not so easily attainable, but the fleeting nature of mind can be calmed down, and its speed of fleeting can be definitely toned down to a measurable level by employing the technique of concentration in our daily life. What is the issue with the mind? It is fleeting from point to point, object to object, subject to subject. What is the solution? To keep it at one point for as much period as possible. And if you want to observe how much we are used to this fleeting, you need to observe your mind. Observing mind is mananam. Observing mind and its thoughts is a high level of sadhana. Let us take a very small but yet daily example of our choice. Drinking tea or coffee is done by us because we feel it is an act of pleasure, happiness. Agreed. But do we enjoy that happiness the way we need to enjoy it? Mind well, the happiness is because of the shantata of the chitta, not because of the substance called coffee or tea. But keeping that besides apart, when I am trying to put my mind into the coffee, I am actually practicing an art of calming down my chitta to a level where no flutter is happening, which does happen for a very small microsecond, and we call that as happiness of coffee. It is happiness of chitta shanti. We being the complicated individuals, unlike the yogis, we cannot immediately go for what is called as objectless chitta shantata. That's a higher objective. For people like us, we can use the same objects of day-to-day life where the mind is getting focused into, provided we stay in that particular object for a longer time. Now imagine you're having your morning tea or coffee, but you're having it with full attention of your mind into that activity or the object. If one is aware of what is normally referred as a Japanese tea ceremony, it is called a ceremony. They drink tea as if it is a ceremony. It has enormous importance into it. It is actually a byproduct of Zen period, the Buddhist samurai period, where even the monks used to sit together for sipping the cup of tea, but that was also converted into an act of meditation. What all we need to do is the mind has to be drawn to the fact that I'm going to drink a cup of tea or coffee. Then every act I do has to be with full thought of only one thing, coffee. So I draw the boiled water from the pot into the cup in a very slow, steady manner. I am able to observe the steam that is coming out of the boiled water that is getting poured into the coffee. My mind is constantly thinking that I am going to have a coffee. It's happening at a very coordinated, slow pace. Don't rush your hand to pick the sugar cubes. The pot which holds the sugar cube needs to be observed. Open the lid, take one or two cubes. They will not fall from your grip of your fork or the prong simply because the acts are done deliberately in a very slow manner. Then when you pour or add those tea bag or coffee, observe the colors that come out. The mind is now completely focused into the act that you are performing. Mind well, no act is big or small, but the act that you do and your involvement in the act. In short, the concentration is what matters, because concentration is an act of subduing all other thoughts to minimum number of thoughts. Mind well, the tea or the coffee is yet not sipped, but the process itself is giving pleasure. Nothing else is intruding in this process. Nobody is calling you. Nobody is disturbing you. No sound is disturbing you. And technically, what we are doing is preparing a tea or coffee. If we follow the same principle in every act that we do in our day-to-day life, then Every act that we do becomes sadhana. And you will always see the mind trying to take a shortcut in every act we do. Putting on shoes can be an act of sadhana. Have you observed? We all know when we put on our shoes, we are so much in hurry that even it irritates us if the socks is not properly fitting, if the shoe is not properly fitting, because we are in a hurry. From there, we run to the elevator, we are in a hurry. We sit in the car and we start, and immediately our mind has already reached the office. We are in a hurry. Observe yourself. You are never in the act that you are doing. You are in, your mind is in something else. Your act is some other thing happening. In the home, you think of office. In the office, we think of home. At the breakfast, we think of office. At the bath, we think of the breakfast. This is because we have surrendered to the acts of mind which keeps on fleeting from a point to point. And if there is no act to be performed, it is so much used to performing the acts, that is the chanchalta or the rajoguna, that a holiday becomes a nightmare and the mind tosses with lots of options and choices. And then you go for what is so-called outing and friends. It is the chanchalata of the mind that is forcing us to do all these acts, because chanchalata means flitting of the mind. And such a person then tries to enter into the praying room and wants to go into meditation. Never possible, sir. To qualify for the higher level of meditation, the day-to-day activities of the transactional world, the Vyavharika Vishwa, has to be well coordinated with right kind of speed, with slow and steady mind in each act that you do. Even while listening, to listen intently to what is being told is called Shravanam. Whether the Shravanam is Apatataha Shravanam, Angi Shravanam, or Anga Shravanam, the three types, the eye, the ear should be completely focused on the words that are falling in the ears. No thought of what I'm going to do after this session is over should come to the mind, but it does. Thus, Mananam means separating yourself from the mind and observing the mind as to what the mind is doing and instructing the mind to do or undo what needs to be done. Then when we look at a person, we shall definitely isolate the bad acts that are being done, but we shall not associate the person with the bad acts. We will be able to separate the sinner from the sin. What is happening is we mix up the sinner with the sin, and then we hate the sinner. We do not hate the sin. So in our relationship also, the act of a wife or a husband is a point of nuisance to us, because of which we label the husband and the wife as the worst enemy. The child which does not listen to what I say, and when we say does not listen to what I say, every one of us wants that in the world my mind should prevail and everybody else's body should act according to my mind. We forget that everyone is also having their own mind. That is why when somebody develops an art of observing the mind, then you start seeing the things as they are in the universe. The trees, they do not ask you whether you like them or you don't like them. But I look at the tree with a like or a dislike. I never observe a tree as a tree. If I see a gulmohar tree, I immediately compare this with, in my childhood there was a tree. So I am carrying my impressions about that object, which I thirst upon the object, and the original beauty of the object is lost. J. Krishnamurti calls this as a fault in observation. He calls it as art of seeing. So when we are able to see the things as they are, the beauty of the things around gallows. And when the beauty of everything around appeals us in its original form, which did appeal to people of great stature like Gurudeva, the world was a place of joy. Because of the impressions that we thirst upon the objects around us, the world for us is a miserable place to live in. The very words that this world is Kali Yuga, people are bad, things are not nice, people are very, very cunning. Gurudeva never saw anybody as cunning in this world because he knew the art of seeing. The mind, when it's able to see the original beauty of things around us, because it is Lord's creation, you get a happiness of a different kind, which is called Allad. The Lord has created a Shakti called Alladini Shakti. The happiness has been squandered and distributed all around us in abundance by the Lord. When we are not able to get out of our mind and its crippling limitations, we are left with no choice but to give a call to the Creator, the Ishvara, and asking for the help so that I am able to utilize my antakarana or the mind in a right manner to perceive the things around me. And such a call or a shout given by an ardent sadhaka to the Ishvara is Omkar. So Omkar is a call given by a one-pointed mind, purer the mind, concentrated the mind, longer is the duration and the length of the shout. It reaches to the Lord faster. Tivra samvegana. Tivra samvega. Mrudu madhyopaya tivra samvega. We studied that. This tivra samvega means ardent desire of your mind to seek the help because of its limitation. It is begging to the Lord. And when such begging is done, because there are so many things you want to ask, all that you want to ask is reinstate me as part of your creation, the way you created, and please stop all the distortion that my mind has created. This ardent request coming from a very serious sadhaka then takes a form of a communication sound, which is not a word, but a sound called Om. By saying Om, we are calling the Lord. When you call somebody in a transactional world, you must know, when I'm calling by a name Pradeep ji, I have in front of me who is Pradeep ji. I'm not calling into an empty space. I have a preconceived idea of what Pradeep ji means. So when I say Pradeep ji, and if he's absent in my surroundings, I know my calling is not of any help because he's not there. In case of Ishvara, he is everywhere, so he can be called from any point of time and space. And when I call Ishvara, the call that I'm giving cannot be a call as a bleating of a goat. The call has to have the preconceived idea in the mind that I'm calling Lord. Now, the fact is, when I say Pradeep ji, I have dimensions and I have a memory of how he looks. But I'm calling now somebody who has no rupam. He has only gunam. He is nirakar sagun. So I have to imagine somebody who is all pervading, full of shadgunas and full of compassion or krupa. Such an Ishvara, such a Ishvara can be called by the Omkara, which means the Omkar has to be associated with Bhavana. When I say Om, I must simultaneously in my antakarana imagine, and it's not a dry imagination, it's imagination when it is supplemented with the faith, shraddha, it becomes bhav. Bhav is felt by heart. It is not an intellectual exercise. When we say heart, it means we pour ourselves in terms of our emotions. Bhav is a reaction at the level of the heart for some cause. The cause is called vibhav. The feeling at the heart is called bhav. And the experience that we get is called anubhav. Vibhav, bhav, anubhav. Let's take an example to understand this. There is a person who has given me a bad word. He said something bad to me. So he becomes the vibhava, the cause of my bhava. What is the bhava in my heart? Anger, because he said something bad. So the person's words are vibhava. My inner feeling that I got of anger is bhava. Then what is the anubhava? I start trembling with anger. The eyes are now bloodshot red. This is called anubhava. And then I start doing some bizarre actions. I throw my hands in the air. This throwing of hands in the air is called vyabhichari bhava. or Sanchari Bhava. So Vibhava, Bhava, Anubhava, Vyabhichari Bhava. This is the process through which the mind goes whenever it interacts with anything. In case of Omkar, when we say Omkara with a Bhavana, Ishvara is a Vibhava. Omkar is a communicating word or the sound, not word, sound. And the feeling Anubhava. What is the Anubhava? The feeling of being elevated and becoming expansive. You're large, you're big, you're huge. All petty things are getting obliterated. Feeling of Brahatta. Ishvara is all pervading. Feeling of happiness. The feeling that elevates me while saying Omkara with Ishvara in mind, the bhavana of Ishvara in mind, and when I repeat it again and again for the sake of keeping that state for a longer time, it is called japa. Repetition of mantra or the sound again and again with the bhavana of the dheyam, which is Ishvara in this case, so that the same can be sustained over a period of time is called japam. And that is why the 28th mantra says, Tat japaha tad artha bhavanam. That Omkara japa and its artha, Ishvara. We have seen Vachya Vachaka Sanketa Janya Sambandha in the last session. Omkar is to be meditated upon while the Vaikhari or non-Vaikhari, Upamshu. Either you are uttering Omkara loudly, it is always better to utter the Omkara loudly in the beginning. Till there is a Sahaja Avastha, the vibrations when they are thrown out through the sound box of the mouth and the larynx both together, the creation of the sound helps us in propelling our mind towards the Ishvara. None else should enter in the mind when the Omkara is being pronounced. So it should ideally be done in a solitude, preferably with less sounds, in a room which should be definitely allotted for this purpose. And even Swami Shivananda as well as Swami Vivekananda had said that this room should be pious and pure. Do not let anybody enter in that room unless he is a Shuddha Sattvika Bhava. Mind well, everything around us affects us. More so when you do a very sensitive thing. No food, no person, no animal, no feelings, vibes, vibrations. So it should be a pious, pure, secluded, personal space where Omkara Dhanam ideally should be done till it gets Sahajavastha. Tad japaha tad artha bhavanam. By contemplating Omkar and its earth as Ishvara and repeating it as a japa, the Ishvara starts coming closer to the yogi. Once the Ishvara knows that the person is trying to tune himself with the creation, the cosmic vibration, because we are riding on the cosmic vibration, the ultimate vibration that is vibrating since the beginning of the universe, the Omkar vibration. So as we start slowly resonating with the Omkara, the vibrations of my body is nothing else but the bundle of vibrations currently vibrating into ulterior frequencies than the frequency required, putting limitations on me, which now with the help of Omkara Japa, taking my chitta or antakarana and resonating with the same frequency that is there in the entire creation or cosmos, then when the tuning starts happening, the Ishvara is slowly moving forward with his Krupa Prasad. That is why every Omkara meditation once ended, for whatever time we do it, maybe starting with half an hour, when it is completed, there should be a feeling of happiness or elation coming to the mind. The freshness, the positivity, the happiness, these are different words to describe the excitatory state that we go into at the end of the Omkara Japasadhana is an indication that Omkara has been done correctly. A vitiating mind, a wavery mind cannot do Omkara Japa. That is the reason the one who in the Vyavahara doesn't have a habit of concentrating on his own work. If you cannot concentrate on driving, if you cannot concentrate on eating, if you cannot concentrate on drinking, where is the chance of you concentrating on Omkar? Everyone rushes to go for meditation. First, check yourself whether in your day-to-day activities, the concentration has reached its peak or not. Also, mind well when do the Omkara, even if you are in a solitude and have taken precautions that no one interferes with you, including any sound, there is something that will constantly nag you, and that is your body. So a person whose body is not in good shape, Shariram Adyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam. There are tons of sadhakas who neglect their health. If you are not able to take care of your food, your weight, your health, your disease, your regular exercise, that's why a yogi has been described in Gorakshanath Samhita. Gorakh Samhita says a yogi has to be lean mass person, not eating meat ahari, not eating much, eating sattvic ahara. All these are required so that none of the body parts interfere when the mind is trying to focus on Omkara. So, when a yogi does yoga sadhana alternating with Omkara sadhana alternating with yoga sadhana, then such a yogi achieves chittam ekagra sampadyate. Ekagrata is achieved. So, Omkara japa plus the Ishvara bhavana. So, Omkara japa with Ishvara bhavana, Parmeshwaraha prasidati. The Parmeshwara becomes Prakashita or Prasanna. And when the Parmeshwara is Prasanna, thereafter Tat Ishwaraha Samadhi Tat Phala Labhena Tam Anugrunhati. The Mukhya Palam is Samadhi. Now, if Samadhi is the height of the perfection of the sadhana, then one who is short of the perfection will be getting the result short of the perfection. But results will come. In the beginning, Omkara sadhana just gives a vague feeling of happiness or better feeling. But the advanced stages of Omkara sadhana makes a sadhaka full of vigor. I remember Jairamji mentioning one incident about Mahashivratri in Mumbai. Gurudeva happened to go for meditation in one of the mandiram, and everybody was waiting outside, and after about 2 hours or 3 hours of meditation, Gurudeva with his hair flowing on his shoulder, when he came out, everyone felt Lord Shiva has come out. That feeling of Lord Shiva walking towards them is because of enormous amount of concentration and the meditation. It leaves bodily changes, environmental changes, and that is how the Omkara is expected to lead us to that stage. Incidentally, in the Samadhi, when the person reaches the Samadhi through Omkara, there are additional benefits Patanjali Maharaj mentions. And the additional benefits are Tataha Pratyag Chetana Adhigamo Api Antaraya Abhavascha. When you have this such a kind of Parameshwara giving you Krupa Prasada because of Omkara Sadhana, you also get what is called as a Swarupa Darshan of Atma, Atma Darshanam. So, when you do Omkara Sadhana and it fructifies into the Krupa Ashirvad of the Ishvara, then we get a Swarupa Darshan of Jiva Atma and all the obstacles in the Yoga Marga disappears. Antaraya means obstacles. Antaraya abhavascha. All the obstacles are destroyed. This sutra means two things. One is, by doing Omkara sadhana in the right manner, the yogi achieves the Krupa Prasad of the Ishvara and goes into Samadhi. One. Two, additional. Atma Darshanam has been taken as an additional benefit, not the main benefit. This is something to be noted, as told by Vyasa Maharshi. Tataha Pratyaga Chetana Adhigamo. Pratyaga Chetana. That means, apart Ishvara Prapti, Ishvara Krupa Upalabdhi, there is an additional benefit called Atma Sakshatkar. What is Pratyaga Chetana? Pratipam Anchati iti Pratyakam. What is Pratipam? Pratipam means Viparita Disha. Viparita Disham. Pratipam. Anchati Gachati. In this Omkara sadhana, the Antakarana goes in Viparita Disham. Why Viparita Disham? There is a subtle philosophical point here. Imagine a crystal ball behind which there is a source of light, Deepam. In the crystal ball, the light comes first and then it gets reflected outside. So the light of direction of the light is from the Jyoti to the crystal ball, from the crystal ball to the surrounding. And in that light, everything is seen and observed. Now this particular Jyoti is Atma Jyoti. This crystal ball is Antakarana. And through Antakarana, when the light gets scattered, we come to know about the world. In one of the sessions of Kathopanishada, we have seen this demonstration. I had brought a small torch to show how the Atma Prakasha gets reflected through the crystal called Antakarna and gets diffracted or spreads all over around to know and see the objects. So in other words, every jiva is a crystal, and that crystal is called buddhi. That buddhi takes the light from the jyoti, the atma, and that crystal called buddhi, when it scatters the light around us through the panchendriyas, we come to know about the world. So this is the direction of the chaitanyam or the light in a normal sense. In case of a yogi, Patanjali Maharaj is saying that this direction of the light is now reversed. The same crystal ball called intellect is now, instead of scattering the light on the things around it, it turns back and looks at the jyoti. This is why it is called as viparita disham pratipam anchati. It goes in the reverse direction. So the buddhi, which is called as a chidabhas, instead of scattering the light of consciousness on the objects around, turns itself 180 degrees and gets a glimpse of the jyoti or the atma darshanam. So that which goes reverse towards the kutastha, so the chidabhas gets reversed towards the kutastha swa antakarana anchati या चेतना दृक् शक्ति सा प्रत्यक चेतना तस्या अधिगमो ज्ञानम भवति. Once he gets the glimpse of the Atman, then he gets the Jnanam. This is the process that happens. So, through Omkara, Ishvara, Krupa, Ishvara, Prapti, and Atma Darshanam. These three things happen. Everyone knows Jnanadeva Maharaj, commonly and fondly referred to as Mauli. Mauli means dear mother. Jnaneshwari is called as dear mother. He has written Jnaneshwari, everyone knows. But Jnaneshwari was Bhavartha Deepika, was the original name. It is a Bhashyam on Jnaneshwari in Prakrit, that is Marathi language. But when his Guru Nivruttinath told him that you've spoken about Bhagavad Gita, but you have not spoken about your personal experience as a yogi, and then he wrote the scripture called Amrut Anubhava. This Amrut Anubhava describes this particular process of, in beautiful drishtantas, he has explained how the Chidabhas comes to know about the Atma Darshanam. So, a yogi, when he reaches through Omkara sadhana to the level where he gets Ishwara Krupa, Ishwara Prapti, and Atma Darshanam, then he feels Yatha eva Ishwara Purushaha Shuddhaha Prasannaha Kevalaha Anupasargaha Tatha Ayam Api. So the yogi feels the way Ishvara is Shuddha. Shuddha means Trigunatita. Prasanna means Klesha Rahita. The way the Ishvara is Kevala. Kevala means Dharma Adharma Samparka Hina. Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. That means the Lord is saying the same thing. You become Ishvara. That is called as Kevalaha Anupasargaha. No jati, no ayu, no bhoga. Away from all this. Anupasargaha tatha ayam api. I am also like him. That's it. This is the last frontier. That means buddhihi pratisamvedi. I am able to now see my own nature, the chidabhasa. The reflected light comes to know the source of the light. The mirror now has turned towards the sun, not towards the reflected light in the objects. That Trigunatita Shuddha Prasanna Kevala Anupasarga Purusha and I, who was witnessing self, are one and the same. That is the meaning of the sutra, Tatha Pratyaga Chetana Adhigamo. And the last part of the sutra, antaraya abhavascha. And all the obstacles that are normally present between me and the Ishvara, all are lost. Then only I reach there. That brings us to the point, what are the obstacles? By now, if we are doing mananam of Yoga Shastra, whatever we are discussing, you will realize that Patanjali Maharaj has started from the highest standpoint and then he's coming towards the transactional world or Vyavaharika Vishwa. He has not started from a ground level and gone to the top. He's coming from top to the bottom. That is why the first path itself is on Samadhi. And in that we saw all the types of Samadhi. Then we saw this Ishvara. Then we saw the Omkara. Now we are coming to the obstacles. That means what happens when somebody starts Yoga Sadhana. This is his structure of building Patanjali Yoga Darshanam. So now the question is, in achieving that status of Ishvara, in achieving the Kevala Pada, ke antaraya ye chittasya vikshepaha. What are the obstacles that the yogi gaze that he's talking about? Ke punaste kiyanno vetti. Who are they? How many are they? What are the obstacles in yoga marga? Now it is becoming more and more relevant to us because it is coming to our level, because we all get these obstacles. So far, we were talking about the journey at the final leg, all the different types of sampradnat samadhi, asampradnat samadhi, etc. Now it came to antaraya or the obstacles. So now we'll be focusing on what are the obstacles for a yogi when he undertakes this sadhana of yoga marga. Ke antaraya ye chittasya vikshepaha, because of which chitta vikshep happens and chitta vritti nirodha doesn't happen. That would be the topic for the next session. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.